And the Lakers season came to a finish on Monday night. You saw how it ended. LeBron blocked at the end by Aaron Gordon, and that was all she wrote. LeBron valiant with 40 points in his final game, and afterwards left the door open to retirement. We've talked about that. Here's what the Lakers front office had to say.
LeBron has given as much to the game of basketball as anyone who's ever played. And when you do that, you earn a right to decide whether you're going to give more. Obviously, our hope would be that his career continues.
Coming off a tough loss like that, the work we've put in this season, I think I was ready to retire after last night too.
You know, there's an old adage that I've heard covering sports as long as I have, and that is never listen to what a player says about his future immediately after a loss ends their season, because the emotions that are good, and that's the way I interpreted that. LeBron gave everything he had on a foot he probably shouldn't have been playing on. He's 38 years old, and he's carrying a team in which I would guess he is at least a little bit frustrated by some of what he has seen around him. I don't blame him for feeling the way he felt, JJ, but I don't think there's any way in the world he retires off of that.
I tend to agree with you on that. I'm not buying the fact that he's going to retire. I will say this, it was shocking because it's the first time we've ever heard him talk about the end of his basketball career. And he's always talked about the fact that he wants to play with Bronny. LeBron, more so than probably any other athlete, at least in my generation, is very aware of his legacy and all of the narratives around it. I don't see him going out after a 4-0 loss to the Denver Nuggets.
I don't see him going out anytime particularly soon at all. I think LeBron James, right now, he said yesterday he's still better than 90% of the players in the NBA. I would up that. Yeah. If LeBron James was healthy this year, he would have had a legitimate case to be made, I think, to be first team All-NBA. He was that good most of the year when he played and was healthy.
Yeah, and really it would be off-brand for LeBron James to be swept out of the playoffs and walk away from the game without any fanfare whatsoever, right? Has he done anything other than nothing unheralded in his career, which includes entering the league with Chosen One tattooed on his back, a decision, a show to decide where he's going in free agency. Like, everything he has done has been big. So for him to leave this way would be totally against everything that he's been about. But could this set up a last dance like we've talked about, where he lets everybody know this is it, farewell tour, go around the league, different stops, Cleveland, very emotional, Miami, maybe a little bit of like a hug with Pat Riley to bury the hatchet there. Boston, are they going to give him an ovation in Boston? Could you imagine that? All the battles he's had there. In New York, his favorite place to play. Like, this sets up for that. Mm-hmm. And the camera crew following around. And then, Christmas Day, 2024, days before his 40th birthday, LeBron Legacy. Come see it in theaters.
I could see that, but I don't think it's that soon. I don't think LeBron is that close to being done. And I will tell you what I do think there was some of in that. And it's complicated because he won't say it publicly, and I understand why. I think there was some real frustration with the guy who was supposed to be carrying him over the finish line right now, and that is his teammate and running mate, Anthony Davis. And I know there was some disagreement here yesterday about just how well or badly Anthony Davis played in this series. Let's face it, Anthony Davis was supposed to be the best player on this team by this time, and LeBron James scored 30 points in the first half of that game the other night, and Davis couldn't get them over the finish line. I understand Davis didn't have a terrible series, but he was thoroughly dominated by Nikola Jokic, his opposite number in the series. I think there was at least some frustration on LeBron's part with the way this thing ended up.
Yeah, I saw what Zach said yesterday. I tend to agree with Zach on this. Anthony Davis, his production went up in every series. Overall, 22-14 in the playoffs, 52% from the field, 4.5 stocks, 1.4 steals, 3.1 blocks. The fact is he got dominated by the best basketball player in the world. The Lakers lost to the best basketball player in the world.
Right.
The Lakers lost to the best duo in the world in Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. I don't tend to agree with that. I realize that LeBron always has some subtext to what he says publicly. To me, that's not directed at Anthony Davis. And the second thing I'll say is, no matter how much we try to make Anthony Davis into this alpha, that's not who he is. He's a fantastic basketball player, an all-NBA player, an all-defensive player. He's not an alpha, no matter how hard we try,
right.
no matter how hard we try to spin the narrative. That's not who he is. He's awesome, but that's not who he is. And the fact that he's not the best player in the world, or not the best player in the Lakers, that speaks more to LeBron not being human than anything else.
You know what? Set aside some time for a little further in this conversation, because I think there's a nuance in this. I don't disagree with what you were saying, but I think that there's something that Anthony Davis seems to have the ability to be that he is just not. And that is the thing that I think frustrates me as a viewer, and I think to some degree LeBron as well.
I just want to point something out on this.
Yeah.
Nikola Jokic leads the NBA in the postseason.
He's the best player.
In touches per game.
No
the
question.
entire offense runs around him, whether it's in the post, the high post, playing out a pick and roll, dribble handoff with Jamal Murray. That's not Anthony Davis and the Lakers offense.
Right.
So why are we expecting him to be as dominant offensively as Nikola Jokic? It's a function of how they play basketball. If LeBron's going to have the ball in his hands, Austin Reeves is going to have the ball in his hands. Unless they say, we're just going to feature Anthony Davis all the time, it's not going to happen.
But if I just told you the two best big men in the entire NBA are playing in this series right now before it began, would you have watched that and said, yeah, those two guys are comparable? Like they're even playing on the same planet? I get it. Jokic is the best player. No debate, no dispute. I'm not suggesting Anthony Davis should outplay him. But did you watch that and say Anthony Davis is a transcendent player in the league?
I've never said that about Anthony Davis. And Anthony Davis is not the second.
Said many times.
By whom? By whom?
By the basketball world.
Joel
at
Embiid
large.
is transcendent.
He should
Giannis
be a top
is
5
transcendent.
player in the league. Shouldn't he be? Have there not been lists after lists said where Anthony Davis is a top 5 player in the NBA?
No, we wanted him to be that.
Okay, that's the point.
He's never been that.
Wait. Why did LeBron want him in LA though?
Because he was available to be traded.
That's it? Oh, just available to be traded? No, he needed a guy, just like Greeny said. This was the whole story around that. Anthony Davis was the guy that they pointed to as a rising star. There was a time ESPN had listed the best players in the league. We do the top 100 every year. He was number 2. LeBron was number 1. He was right up there, and he was playing that level.
That's what I mean.
So you have that guy, and you take him to halftime with 31 points. I emptied the tank to get us up by 15. I need somebody to take me home. That guy's you, who I just brought in here to get us to the next level so I don't have to carry us, and he didn't do that. That's why people are reacting this way.
I understand that. I understand all of that. I would disagree with the fact that Anthony Davis was ever the second best player in the world. I'll disagree with that.
We had a list that said that.
I'll strongly disagree with that list. Here's the thing. LeBron going to Lakers with the roster that they had at that point in time, them getting Anthony Davis, they win a championship. For a large part of both the Western Conference Finals and the Finals, Anthony Davis was the best basketball player.
Right.
He was the best basketball player. Okay? You're asking him to be a second star. He absolutely has been a second star. If he can't turn the corner and become the guy, that's just not who he is.
Then they have the wrong guy.
Well,
they won a championship.
No, but that's us
now
saying,
they have the wrong guy.
But that's us saying there is something that he hasn't become. All right, I'm so late.
You guys are missing the original point, though.
Yeah.
They lost to Nikola Jokic.
Right. They lost
He's
to a
better than everyone.
Right.
The Denver Nuggets are better than everyone.
Right. And the Lakers were a 7 seed. I understand all of that. But they were there. They had real chances to win every one of these games. Likely or unlikely, JJ Redick, if I said the Celtics are going to win tomorrow night to force a Game 6, would you say that's likely or unlikely?
I'm going to say likely, even though Boston has not been a good home team over the last 2 postseasons. I expect Jason Tatum to continue his great play in elimination games. I think the supporting cast, Grant Williams, Marcus Smart, Al Horford, all those guys with big Game 4s, that will continue in Game 5.
All right, let's go to the West. Zach Lowe, if I said Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets are going to win their first championship, would you say that is likely or unlikely?
Can I know who they're going to play first and whether they'll have home court advantage, which is kind of important? Without knowing that, I will go likely because they've been dominant in the playoffs. They'd be favored over Miami, I believe, with home court, and Boston has been so inconsistent. I'll go likely. Throw a party, Denver.
And to the point that everyone might be wondering, yes, the Celtics would have home court in that series if they got there. Finally, Alan, if I said LeBron has played his last ever game in a conference final, would you say that's likely or unlikely?
I'm going to say likely, not being a hater. It's just what he's doing at this age. It's just that's the part that's unlikely, of course. And for it to continue with the Western Conference, seeing what Phoenix can make and other teams as well, building up, going after them and not knowing what the future holds for them as a roster, unlikely. This might be the last time we have seen him in a conference final.
Well, I'll remind everyone, he was talking about retiring after that game, and you wanted to hear from the Lakers brass about that yesterday. They did address LeBron's comments. Here's what they said.
LeBron has given as much to the game of basketball as anyone who's ever played. And when you do that, you earn a right to decide whether you're going to give more. Obviously, our hope would be that his career continues.
Coming off a tough loss like that, the work we've put in this season, I think I was ready to retire after last night too.
So I almost want to leave the conversation there. We touched on this briefly. I don't think any of us think that LeBron James is going to retire. I don't have any issue with him speaking in that momentary frustration that Darvin Ham just alluded to. This is a guy who had an injury that would have taken almost every other player out for the season at the end of February. I think he went out on his shield, and if he was expressing the momentary frustration of that, then so be it. The conversation then turned to a really interesting, I think, debate, if you will, about Anthony Davis, his role in all of this, and I guess for lack of a better way of framing it, just how good he actually is. And I wanted to revisit that because what I hope we can have here is the nuanced conversation that I think must be had about Anthony Davis. When one complains about Anthony Davis, one is not saying this guy stinks, because he clearly doesn't stink. He's clearly a very, very good player. But there have been moments in time over the course of time when he was drafted, and at different moments in New Orleans, and even that flash that we saw in the bubble where we said, Anthony Davis is the kind of guy that you can hitch your wagon to and say, ride me to a championship. And what I think has been proven is that he isn't that. And so when we express frustration at that, you keep saying to me, JJ, well, Greeny, that's just not who he is. And I keep saying back to you, I know, and that's kind of the problem. Do you understand the point I'm trying to make?
Yeah, that seems more like a you problem. And I don't mean that in any disrespectful way. It's like we're trying to make someone that they're not. Anthony Davis in New Orleans, they got out of the first round one time.
Right.
So the idea that you could ever hitch your wagon to him and you could be a contender, that's just not based in any sort of reality. Look, I think a bunch of things can be true at the same time. Anthony Davis is an all-NBA player, all-defensive type player. I thought he was fantastic throughout the playoffs. His production went up every round. Defensively, he was great. And I can also say Nikola Jokic dominated him. I can say both because Nikola Jokic is the best player in the world, because the Denver Nuggets are the best team in basketball, because Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray have the best two-man game in basketball. Think about this. Anthony Davis is the primary defender in that series. Jokic was 21 of 37. Now, 2 of those shots were one-legged, somber shuffle, end-of-shot clock, fall-away, over-the-head three-pointers.
Right.
Like, some of this is just Nikola Jokic's greatness. And his greatness exceeds Anthony Davis's greatness. That all can be true. It's not a knock on Anthony Davis, but the idea that he can be the best player on a championship team, I'm not sure that's ever been based in reality.
Okay, so then that part of it I don't disagree with. Maybe that was never based in reality. So now I can't disagree with that. I'm saying I thought he could be. There was no question in my mind. I remember there was a time when you would ask that famous question, Zach, that we always ask. If you could start an NBA team right now, start a franchise with any one player in the world, there was a time when, based on his age and everything else, Anthony Davis was a popular answer to that question. And so that, I guess, is the reason that when he falls short of that, it feels like a disappointment. What would be a great performance for most other people sometimes feels like less than that for him. Is that an unreasonable way to look at it, Zach Lowe?
I've lost track of what the whole AD discourse is at this point, so I don't know what's reasonable and what's not. One thing has changed from the bubble when Anthony Davis looked like, yeah, maybe he could be that guy, till now. Just one. His jump shot disappeared for the most part. That's the difference between consistent 25 to 30 every game and the occasional 14, 15, 18, 20 that leaves you feeling a little cold. That's it. Everything else is pretty much the same. And look, Anthony Davis is a big guy. With two exceptions in the entire NBA, Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic, big guys are at least slightly dependent on wings and point guards to get them the ball and put them in position to score. Slightly dependent, not always dependent, but somewhat dependent for their points. Embiid and Jokic just go get it like Hakeem Olajuwon and Shaq back in the day. AD's never been like that. And so when the pick and pop jumper isn't as consistent as it once was, isn't as elite as it was during that run in the bubble, the points are going to fluctuate a little bit. That's just who he is. Swagoo said yesterday, boy, I've had this conundrum with Anthony Davis for 5 years. And I said to him, if you've had a conundrum for 5 years, maybe it's not a conundrum. Maybe this is just what it is, what he is as a player. A lot of the Denver series, from Denver's perspective, was about, okay, where's Anthony Davis? Oh, he's on Aaron Gordon. That means he's going to obliterate the rim. How do we counter that? He led the playoffs in rebounding. He led the playoffs in blocks. We just don't talk about these things because I guess they're not sexy or they're not interesting, or we want to get angry when he has 15 points because he shot 5 of 14 and missed some floaters. It's a huge part of the game. It's a huge part of his value. It's a huge part of why LeBron wanted him in Los Angeles, because LeBron understood, as I get older, I'm going to need someone who can single-handedly make us a top 10 defense every season. But we don't want to talk about that. We just want to talk about why did he score 18 points this game and 40 the previous game.
That's fair. He shot 4 for 15 when they came home in that big game 3. But your points are obviously well taken. So, Alan, what is the right way to characterize what LeBron James' running mate is right now?
Not enough. Clearly. I mean, first of all, Zach, I love you, but he's not Ben Wallace. Ben Wallace was a great defensive player that you didn't expect to have an impact on the offensive side.
You got to stop mentioning Ben Wallace. No one is mentioning Ben Wallace.
Well, you call him a great defensive player. That's what you're talking about now. We're focusing on one side of the game.
Hold on, one at a time. Go ahead.
I said he's a great defensive player who scored 40 points in a conference finals game, 21 points 2 nights ago, and we're acting like he scored 2. Don't give me the Ben Wallace stuff. No one is mentioning Ben Wallace. You are bringing it up as a straw man that is not a thing.
Okay, because you were saying we're not focusing on the defensive side, so we're just kind of pigeoning home now. He's just this great defensive impact guy.
About it. We're not talking about it.
Here's why we're not talking about it. Because he's at a level where that's what we expect. That's his standard, to be a great impact defensive player who is also supposed to help LeBron on the other side as well. So LeBron goes for 31 in the first half. Now you got to take me home because I can't do it for 48 minutes anymore. That's part of it. This was a guy that once all of our ESPN basketball experts had as number 2 in the top 100. This was in the 2020 season. Number 2, LeBron was number 1. You have never had 2 players on the same team, 1 and 2. So our expectations for Anthony Davis are up here. And what we saw him going up against, the best player in the world, is that he didn't match up on the offensive end. He couldn't hold his own enough in this series to get 1 win. Yeah. And that's what I saw with my eyes, not the box score.
Go ahead, JJ.
Yeah, I'm going to completely disagree with the not enough comment. 2020, they win the championship. At times, he's the best player in the conference finals. Best player in the conference finals. For early in that series against Miami, he was the best player. 2021, they have the quick turnaround. They don't bring back Caruso. They use their mid-level exception on Montrezl Harrell, who was unplayable in the playoffs. Then they make the Russ trade. There's basically 2 seasons of just a misfit roster. They finally put a comparable roster together. They get to the conference finals. He averages 26 and 14, and they lose to the better team, Alan. They lose to the better team.
What was the question? It wasn't about.
You said he's not enough for LeBron.
The question was
I disagree.
Right now, where LeBron is,
that's
where this team is.
That's because Jokic is the best player in the world and Denver's the best team.
So you
what is so hard to understand about that?
You have 2 players that are great, and you still need 1 more? Now you need 1 more star? You don't have enough with 2 stars. They have 2 stars. You have 2 stars.
I disagree with that entirely.
So they don't need another star?
No, they don't need another star.
That's what we're hearing, that they're now looking for another star.
Then let's ask the question. What do the Lakers need?
They need Jokic.
No. But could LeBron and Anthony Davis be the 1 and 2 on a team that could win a championship? And if so, what do they need around
right now?
Last 30 seasons. 4 game sweeps. tied for the 4th lowest point differential. That series was decided by an average of 6 points per game.
Yeah, they were
plus
close
24.
games. They could have won all 4 of them.
They could, and think about this. 3 times, I mentioned the somber shuffle, 3 times Jokic hit one of those. Jamal Murray hit one as well in game 1. Like, this series was dictated on a few shots.
Yeah.
That's the sport.
Yeah.
That's the sport.
So the Lakers are closer than the sweep looks. And they shouldn't really change a lot.
Did you watch, Alan?
So
I know
they
you
shouldn't
watched the
change a lot.
series.
Of
I
course
know
I
you
did.
watched the series.
But I'm
Of course
asking
they're
you, though.
closer
Yes.
than the sweeps.
All right, because we come out of a sweep, and now there's this talk of, does LeBron want to keep playing? Are they going to get Kyrie? Who's another star they can get? That's what Windy was talking about. All the discussions about the Lakers are, how do they make this roster better?
The league is moving away from the three-star model, and everybody knows that. And if they double down on that like they did with Russ, they're making a mistake.
All right, I have to leave it there in the interest of time. Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.